It is Tuesday and time once again to talk with Dr. Bob Olivieri from Olivieri Chiropractic and the Great Nate program and the very special series that we've been running through these past several weeks called 9 Hidden Secrets Why You Can't Lose Weight. And today we're going to be talking about the brain fat loss connection. Dr. Bob, good to see you once again.
Hi Phil, it's good to be here.
Always very interesting, always informative, and the brain fat loss connection. We always say that the brain's in charge of everything. Everything stems from the brain, right?
It does, right? Your brain and your nervous system controls every single bodily function. They all go to your organs, every single one, from your heart to digestion. It controls everything. So why not, talk about the brain and the weight loss connection? Now, it's kind of interesting how, like, most people wouldn't normally think that the brain itself has anything to do with weight loss. So you usually think of digestion as having a lot to do with it. But we're gonna break down the nervous system in kind of like a simplistic form, and then we're going to talk about some of the things that influence weight loss from the perspective of neurotransmitters within your brain. So how the nervous system works is really simple. I'm going to kind of keep it as simple as I can. Okay. They'll have like 2 nerve endings that will meet, and the endings of nerves don't actually touch. What they'll do is they'll transmit signal from one end of the nerve to the other. So at one end of the nerve, you'll have this little tip, and it'll have these little things called vesicles. And inside the vesicle will have this neurotransmitter. And when it receives an impulse from one end of the nerve all the way down to the very end, it's stimulated to release this neurotransmitter into a space. Now, in that space, on the other end of that space, is another nerve. So it will connect, and whatever that neurotransmitter tells it to do, the other nerve will conduct that activity. Yeah. So
kind of like a wireless connection.
It really is. It is.
I got to ask quickly, how big are these nerves? I mean, are there many different connections of these?
Yeah, they say there's 100 billion nerves within your brain.
100 billion?
Yeah, and So what happens with that is, in order for that connection to happen, there are neurotransmitters. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to talk about certain types of neurotransmitters that affect weight. There's a bunch of different types of neurotransmitters throughout your whole body. There's serotonin, there's dopamine, there's GABA, there's acetylcholine, there's epinephrine, norepinephrine, things like that. But we're going to talk about the 2 major neurotransmitters that affect weight loss. Has to do with serotonin, which is a really big one, and dopamine. Mm-hmm. So serotonin is really your happy neurotransmitter. It produces, and you'll hear about that when people talk about drugs. So they'll have drugs called SSRIs, which are serotonin, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And we're going to talk about that, but I want to go over the anatomy a little bit and how that actually happens. So we were talking about one end of the nerve and the other end of the nerve. In one end of the nerve, you have these vesicles that will release the neurotransmitter, and it will stay within what we call the synaptic cleft, which is the space in between the 2 nerves. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side of the nerve, there's a receptive site. In order for that neurotransmitter to go over to it, mm-hmm. they have these little binding receptor sites, which we've talked about multiple times in this series. Right. And once it fits into these receptor sites, the other end of the nerve will transmit that impulse all the way along. So there's a lot of things that can actually go wrong in this particular situation. In the case of, let's say, serotonin, there is something what we call a precursor. So there's a thing called tryptophan. You'll talk about that when people talk about turkey at Thanksgiving. So tryptophan is necessary. It's a substrate that's necessary, and it's really an amino acid. And what it will do is it will turn into serotonin in the presence of other things, other cofactors such as nutrients. So this is why we can influence the brain so much, because if they don't have these cofactors such as iron and other things, then it can't turn into serotonin. So if you don't have enough of the tryptophan in your body, if you don't have enough of these nutrients, we'll talk about the iron and other things, you can't produce serotonin. Also, if there's not enough of that in the vesicles to be released, there can be a problem. And also on the other side of that nerve ending where there is receptors to be able to bring that serotonin over and make that nerve go by, it can be a problem. So there's 4 different ways of which serotonin isn't going to work. Well, if serotonin is not working, you're not going to be happy, right? And how can you be happy? How can you be driven to actually go and lose weight if there's a blockage in there? So what an SSRI does is it doesn't allow that serotonin that's laying in that space to get to be reused again. And so to me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. How about making a whole lot of serotonin so the serotonin itself can be used? Instead of taking what little is being made, how about making more of it? And so serotonin, 70% of it is made in your gut. How crazy is that, right? It's made in your gut,
okay.
right? So if you have intestinal inflammation, so we just talked about that 2 weeks ago with leaky gut and all those things.
Right.
So if you have an inflammatory gut and a leaky gut, intestinal permeability issues, you're not making enough serotonin. So taking a drug to be able to hold on to just a little bit amount that you're already making, maybe a short-term solution, but how about go all the way back and let's increase the 70% that's being made down there and allow that to actually be processed. Pretty neat, huh?
Pretty neat. Pretty neat stuff. Again, Dr. Bob Olivieri talking about hidden secrets, why you might not be losing weight. And again, if you want to hear the series in its entirety, you can go online to 9hiddenweightlossecrets.com and catch up on any one of these segments that we've talked about.
That's right.
We have more with Dr. Bob coming up, and you can call him at his office to find out more information about this program at 609-886-8585. More with Dr. Bob when we continue here on the program.
Hi, I'm Brian Kniff.
Good morning, 8:26 is our time here on 98.7 The Coast. And we're that last week of August. We are with Dr. Bob Olivieri once again on a Tuesday. We talk with Dr. Bob every Tuesday. We're in the midst of, or actually winding down our 9 hidden secrets why you can't lose weight. We're in week number 8. And what is today's topic, Dr. Bob?
We're talking about the brain-fat loss connection.
Okay, that sounds like serious stuff. So I've already learned something about the nervous system, which is just amazing to me. You have how many billion nerves in your body?
100 billion.
100 billion. No wonder you can have like problems with your nervous system and nerve damage. With all those parts, it's very easy for something to go wrong.
It's amazing, right? And all of these, how they relate to one another are through these synaptic connections that we're talking about right in here. And that's how neurotransmitters actually, basically, they're just chemical messengers to be able to transmit one signal to another signal. And so where everything goes wrong really is kind of like within these little areas of the connections called the synaptic clefts. So in essence, you know, what we were talking about is serotonin, because the two biggest ones that are influencing weight loss is serotonin and dopamine. Serotonin has a lot to do with your mood, such as depression, anger, cravings, OCD. And when you're dealing with the other one with dopamine, it's really your pleasure reward centers. And that's where people really, you know, if dopamine's really bad, it has to do with self-worth and depression and lack of motivation. So it's really tough to get somebody to lose some weight if they're not motivated. So I want to finish up with the serotonin portion of this. So basically what we were talking about is serotonin starts with an amino acid called tryptophan. So you can get that in your diet most of the time. And if you can't, you can supplement with that. And tryptophan is turned into 5-HTTP. And you may have heard of 5-HTP before because about 10 years ago, there was a bad batch that came over from Japan, and the United States took it off of all the shelves. Well, it's a shame because it's an important element in order for your body to produce serotonin, and when you can't do that, it was a really good supplement for a lot of functional medicine practitioners to be able to give to their patients.
They took it off, they didn't put it back on?
They didn't. There was well, they did now. It's back on. Yeah, they realized it was just one batch from one area in Japan, but it took probably like 4 or 5 years for the FDA to be able, well, it wasn't the FDA because it's not a drug, but whatever it was, whoever took it off the market, but it wasn't allowed in the United States.
Okay.
And now when it came back, it's very expensive. It's extremely expensive. And so from 5-HTP, you can produce serotonin. But each one of those transitions require certain things. So you need iron, you need what they call BH4, which is tetrahydrobioptenin. You need a whole lot of other things, B vitamins, to be able to actually, magnesium, to be able to go from each one of these steps. So if you don't have good brain function, the best way to actually supplement that is looking for those pathways that aren't working and provide the nutrients that you need to be able to allow that to happen. What we were just saying is that when you're dealing with the medications such as the SSRIs, all that's doing is taking what you already have and just kind of like reusing it a little bit. But there's so many different mechanisms that can go wrong. We were saying that not having enough tryptophan, not having enough of those cofactors such as the supplementation, the binding problem going to the other end of the neurotransmitter, and also the reuptake. So we can influence each one of those particular steps in a nutritional way to be able to allow that to actually work so much better. But and blood sugar also is an issue, so you have to control that, and the intestinal permeability stuff that we just talked about. So controlling serotonin is extremely important, and doesn't necessarily have to be done with medication. I mean, for severe cases, I guess you do need to do that, but and like I said, for a short period of time, that's a discussion you have between your medical doctor, whoever prescribes that. But the reality of it is you can make people happy in a natural way, but you have to look at all four of those mechanisms. The medication only really looks at one of those four mechanisms.
I never even considered controlling my serotonin or my tryptophan.
Sure, yeah.
Most people don't, I guess.
No, they don't. But what they do is they turn to a drug for, honestly, as a chiropractic neurologist, meds don't do great things for brains. They don't. Mm-hmm. They don't. There's a lot of other things you can do naturally, and it's so much better for your brain. Like if you're doing certain things, you're just really supplementing for something that your body should be doing. Mm-hmm. And if you understand the pathways all the way along, you're better off just being able to hit all four of those things that can go wrong. I just mentioned, you want to hit all four of those, and most of the time you can get things better. Dopamine is the other one. We talked about pleasure reward. So the dopamine starts out with a thing called tyrosine. Tyrosine goes into dopa, which transfers into dopamine. There's a couple pathways, again, with nutritional supplements that you can actually provide to be able to take somebody that basically it's really depression. It's like lack of motivation. How can you get somebody to lose weight if they're really not motivated? So I have to say, when we come in, we have a process that we take everybody through, and they fill out a lot of different paperwork, and we're going to go over questions in a moment to be able to help you determine whether you have a shortage in either one of these. But I'm not going to have success with a client that comes into my office if they're short in dopamine. So we start them off right away with supplementation and get their dopamine there. Because if they're not motivated to get off the sofa, they're sure not going to be motivated to change their entire lifestyle. So that's one of the big things that we try to address.
And it's important that they are motivated enough to walk into your office. That's, I guess, the first step.
Absolutely. They've tried everything. This isn't going to work, all that stuff. So we can actually, if we get their brain functioning a little bit better, where they're a little bit motivated and they see rewards along the way, I'll tell you, the results are 1,000 times better for them.
We're speaking with Dr. Bob Olivieri, as we do every Tuesday. You can check out the rest of this series online at 9hiddenweightlosssecrets.com. All the information is there for you from this entire series. We're in week number 8 of this program. We'll continue on the program in just a few minutes here as we proceed on this Tuesday. Good morning. We're back again here on 98.7 The Coast. 8:51 is the time. We're speaking with Dr. Bob Olivieri. It is Tuesday, and we're finishing up our discussion today about this particular aspect of the 9 hidden weight loss secrets. And what is today's topic once again, Dr. Bob?
We're talking about the brain and the fat loss connection.
All right.
So earlier today we were talking about the two most important neurotransmitters in your brain that will help you or hurt you losing weight. So one of them was serotonin and the other one was dopamine. So how do you know whether you have a serotonin problem or a dopamine problem? Well, there are some tests that you can actually do, which we actually perform in our office. But questionnaires actually will give you an idea of which one of these neurotransmitters really aren't working well. So we have every one of our patients that are coming in for our Feel Great in 8 program fill out these questionnaires. They're called neurotransmitter assessment forms. So some of the questions that would be asked if someone has a serotonin problem, which is your happy hormone, would be, are you losing pleasure in hobbies and interests? How often do you feel overwhelmed with ideas to manage? How often do you have feelings of inner rage or anger? Do you feel paranoid, or do you often feel sad or down for no reason whatsoever, which is a really big one? Do you feel like you're not really enjoying life when you should be? The other one is, how often do you feel a lack of artistic appreciation? Do you feel depressed in overcast weather? Are you losing enthusiasm for your favorite activities? That's a very big one. Things that you used to love to do. Are you losing enjoyment for your favorite foods? Are you losing enjoyment for friendships and relationships? If you're starting to find yourself not really wanting to participate. Do you have difficulty falling into deep, restful sleep? How often do you have feelings of dependency on others? Do you feel more susceptible to pain? Do you have feelings of unprovoked anger? And are you basically losing interest in life? If you're having, if you're answering yes to a lot of those questions, you probably have a serotonin deficiency. And as we mentioned, there's a lot of different processes that you can do to actually boost that. The other one is dopamine, which is a little bit more, it's like the feeling of worthlessness, destructive behavior sometimes. People that really get addicted to hardcore drugs, almost all of them have a dopamine. It's your pleasure reward section, a lack of motivation. So if you're answering yes to any of these particular questions, there's a good chance that you have a dopamine problem. Do you have feelings of hopelessness? Do you have any self-destructive thoughts? Do you have an inability to handle stress? Do you have anger and aggression while under stress? Do you feel like you're not rested even after long hours of sleep? Do you isolate yourself from others? Have you have unexplained lack of concern for family and friends? Are you distracted from your tasks? Do you have an inability to finish your tasks? Do you need to consume large amounts of caffeine to stay awake? Do you feel your libido has decreased? You lose your temper for minor reasons, and you have feelings of worthlessness. So there are ones that are really along the lines of dopamine. And you don't really, and lots of times in both of these, you don't really understand what's going on because you used to be a happy person, or you used to never be angry, and now you are. And so both of those you can see, I think, pretty clearly. If you're having some issues like that, how are you going to be able to go and lose weight? How are you going to actually be able to stick to a regimen, whether you're unhappy with your life or whether you really just have no motivation whatsoever? You're not going to be able to stick with that. So in our assessment, we do this initially when somebody comes in. Again, our program is 6 to 8 months, but we look at that right away. So and we need to deal with that neurotransmitter portion of, and I will tell you, in the very beginning, when we start to clear up the intestinal permeability, the liver detoxification, and get their energy cycles working, almost all these neurotransmitter problems heal themselves. But if you're coming in and these are really big issues on the questionnaires, we hit those right away, immediately, because you're not getting through the program if you're having problems with that. We've had 2 patients that came in, and both times we really needed to address that hardcore, like really go after it. And it's amazing once you change, that changes around, and it takes probably about 6 to 8 weeks to be able to for them to actually feel the differences. Wow, then their performance level is amazing. So that's the topic primarily for the brain and the fat loss connection. And it's a tough topic to talk about on the radio, but I believe it's really, really important to be able to for people to understand that the reason why they're not motivated to act and they're not getting the successes, lots of times it's not really their fault. It's something that's happening internally.
Gotcha. Now, how can people contact you and find out when your next program is? Because I know we got the holiday weekend coming up, and when will the next seminar or whatever?
The next seminar is going to be September 13th because the holiday is coming up, and the topic is why do you still have thyroid symptoms when all your lab tests come back normal? So it is a thyroid program. However, if you're suffering from any of these conditions, such as indigestion, such as GI problems, hormone problems, those types of things, still come to the workshop because we talk about all of these. And hopefully by understanding this series, you'll understand that this is all interrelated. Every bit of this is interrelated. So these are just different points that we hit on, because people really want their particular condition evaluated and managed. But come to the workshop and you're going to learn an awful lot about all these things that we're talking about now. And we go into a lot of detail.
You do need to register in advance. Call the office, Dr. Bob Olivieri in Rio Grande at 609-886-8585. And what is the website for more information about what we're talking about here today?
It is 9hiddenweightloss.secrets.com if you would like to actually get this entire series. So 9 as in the number 9, right. hiddenweightloss.secrets.com. And if you'd like to learn more about our program, if you go on feelgreatin8, EIGHT, institute.com, you'll learn an awful lot about our functional medicine program.
All right, Dr. Bob, thanks very much. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Thanks for having me on, Phil.
All right, every Tuesday with Dr. Bob Oliveri from Oliveri Chiropractic in Rio Grande.